Good evening, everybody, and a very, very warm welcome to everyone with us tonight, and also to all of those who will view this recording later in their own time. My name is Rosa Murray, and I'm a member of the Scottish Laity Network, who, along with Justice and Peace Scotland, Open House Magazine, Pax Christi Scotland, and SCIAF, have co-badged this evening. And my thanks to all of you in those groups and to those groups for supporting us. I'm sure that, like me, many of you have struggled to find the words to express concern, horror, sorrow, and grief as the genocide in Gaza unfolds in front of our eyes. There are times when we run out of words. And this is often when the poets come to our aid to articulate what we feel, to find a way through the darkness. Alison and Khawla have done this with their daily reflections and poetry, articulating the unspeakable with their poetic cries, speaking for us and for those who cannot or are not heard. Alison is known to many of us here. She holds the UNESCO Chair in Refugees Integration through Education, Language and Arts. She's based in Glasgow University. She has worked with Palestinians in Gaza for many years on peacemaking projects. Khawla is a scholar of language, culture and social justice who lived in Gaza for 14 years. And together they have published Keep Telling of Gaza. And tonight they will share their words with us. You're so welcome to be with us tonight. Welcome, Alison and Khawla.
Thank you so much, Rosa. And it's just lovely to see so many friends online and joining us for this evening. We're going to use some music. We're going to use some words of prose, and then we will respond to one another in call and response. But I'm also going to share some slides with you as well as we begin to tell of Gaza. So we'll start with some music. This is a song written by my friend Karine Polwart, who has dedicated this music to the peace movement and to all who work for peace. It's called Better Things.
10,000 years of big ideas distilled into a billion fears. A grand design, a shiny rocket, a bullet in a bully's pocket. So mesmerized by particles, we disregard the articles, the ones we wrote to keep the peace, sullied now in blood and greed and grease. Is this the best that we can do? Oh, I can think of better things. Can't you? With the devil's pitchfork in our hands, we turn the fields of foreign lands. We mine the gulf, we dig it deeper. We free the serpent from its keeper. Yet these are the hands that fix the bones, the ones that build with sticks and stones. These are the hands that plant the tree, the ones that pull a newborn baby free. Is this the best that we can do? Oh, I can think of better things. Can't you? Oh, I can think of better things that hands can make and hearts can sing. For now we deal with those for whom life is but a carnal tomb, in which the darkness holds no power, near does the final hour. We may lament the deadly art of tiny atoms torn apart, visions that we can't return, and future fires in which we fear we'll burn. But this is the art of those before who found a cure within the core, the noble mind behind the ray that eased our earthly cares away. Is this the best that we can do? Oh, I can think of better things, can't you? Oh, I can think of better things that hands can make and hearts can sing, and hearts can sing.
I can think of better things, can't you? On the 26th of January, 2024, the world's highest court ruled that there is a plausible risk that the state of Israel is committing genocide of the Palestinian people in Gaza. On that day, it made orders to all parties to the Convention for the Prevention and Punishment of the Crime of Genocide, the Genocide Convention, which are binding and cannot be appealed. With this, the impunity from prosecution and accountability, which Israel has enjoyed exceptionally, following numerous breaches of international law over many decades, especially pertaining to illegal occupation and settlement, ended. For those who love Israel and Palestine and wish for the people of Israel and Palestine of all faiths and none, and of all ethnicities to live together in a land that they can call home, this order by the International Court of Justice was the saddest of moments. It showed that there was a risk that the people could not live together safely in the land, and the politics of death were taking over from the way, the truth, and the life. Over 15 years, I have worked daily with colleagues in the Gaza Strip and have built up enduring friendships and work in peace building through languages, culture, and the arts. Since the 9th of October 2023, I have received daily messages from my friends and colleagues. Words have failed us, and words have found us. Following the order by the International Court of Justice as a sign to my friends in Gaza that they were not alone, and that even in the countries arming their enemies, people were praying, I began to write a cycle of prayers. The liberation theologian Walter Wink says, "We are not easily reduced to prayer." For me, the prayers have been an important part of my discipline and discipleship, and of keeping the rule of the Iona community, committing to pray in all times, even in genocidal times. The prayers or the cries or the poems, we're not really sure what they are spare and angry and despairing and hopeful and yearning. And most of all, for me, they are spiritually necessary in order that I might begin the day and do the work I need to do. They commit to gratitude in all things, though they have wavered greatly in this. And they draw from our rich resources in the three religions of the book and especially in my own faith, the Christian faith, found in the Psalms, in the Gospels, in the prophets, and in the tradition of lamentation. And it has often been said of my writing that I work in the tradition of the poets of lamentation. So in these prayers, in these cries, I have called out in the agony of the suffering of a people whose suffering is our own, in the assurance that the knowledge of prayers sustains in the struggles and in the suffering. The first prayer that I wrote is this, and it was published in a booklet published online by the Iona community, Wild Goose resource group, called Call and No Response. And it collected together the very first prayers that I wrote, which I just put out into the world and waited in a belief that somebody somewhere would hear these and that this was part of my commitment to the people of Palestine to pray in all things and all times. So the first prayer, I wake very early and check the names of the overnight dead. I give thanks each day friends and colleagues survive. I scrape, scroll, and upload evidence to archive genocide. Each entry handfasting to justice, and I beg for mercy from whoever may bestow it. On the 30th of January, the United Kingdom joined the United States, Germany, Canada, Australia, and other rich world countries to withdraw funding from the United Nations Works and Relief Agency, UNRWA. UNRWA is the largest agency supporting Palestinian refugees and is a lifeline to those living in the war zone and under the Israeli blockade in Gaza. The decision to withdraw vital humanitarian assistance was taken despite the fact that no evidence of public claims by Israel was forthcoming or supplied. It came just 2 days after the International Court of Justice had ordered that all measures possible must be taken by Israel under the Convention on the Prevention and Punishment of Genocide to prevent the risk of genocide. I wrote to my MP urgently. I made a donation to UNRWA's work. Neither are negligible actions, but the fire in my bones and the discipline of my training kept compelling me to write. And this writing continued, following the law and the prophets, and I found myself resting over many days on language and turning my daily discipline of prayer into one of public speech and writing in that prophetic tradition and posting my short verses on various social media feeds. Every day I see your words, Alison, is now a greeting when I meet people. Every day there is a truth, words of sanity, honesty, prayer worth saying. The months of stony silence and furtive whispered, I'm so sorry for your genocide, turned into greetings made of tears and relief, and people imploring me to continue, not to stop, not to miss a day, telling me this was the voice missing in the churches in the UK and needed, badly needed. People began writing to me from afar, and the booklet came to existence. In Manchester, my colleague Khawla Badwan had the same fire in her bones. Also a linguist, a Palestinian intellectual and academic from Gaza, she replied on the 3rd of February, and so it began. The response to the call, what we as linguists would call a languaging of the genocide, an active quest for words from the rubble of our sanity as meanings were blown to pieces, for enough dust and spent bombshells and rubble, enough blood and bone and courage to make meaning and make language, prayer, poetry, anguish and cries emerge from their caged and besieged silence. I found myself reading United Nations and human rights legal experts avidly for understanding and to repair my own fraying sanity at what I was experiencing. The law was a comfort, especially the words of the South African legal team and the work of Daniel Machover, Heidi Matthews, and most of all, Francesca Albanese, together with journalists in Gaza bearing too much alone without their international colleagues able to join them, and political commentators such as Marwan Bashara. Francesca Albanese's report to the United Nations Office of Human Rights, The Anatomy of Genocide, was like cool spring water to a parched intellect. But, as Podrick Otuma says, precision won't do for this kind of healing. There is no worth big enough for the hell that is survived. And as a poet and person who prays, together with the traditions artistically and intellectually from which I draw inspiration, it was the spare language of crying in the wilderness, out of the abyss, which flowed. In many ways, I have drawn from sources of Jewish writers and persecuted artists and intellectuals through my study of German literature of the Holocaust. Victor Klemperer's diaries of Lingua Tertia Imperiali were strong reference points, published in English as I Shall Bear Witness to the Bitter End and the Lesser Evil. In these diaries, Klemperer charts the collapsing language of the Third Reich, clings on to words and examines their hollowing out through propaganda. But the poetry and plays of Bertolt Brecht, a constant compass in this work, echoed loudly from Mother Courage and her children to the line in Schlechte Zeit für Lyrik, a bad time for poetry. In mir streiten sich die Begeisterung über den blühenden Apfelbaum und das Entsetzen über die Reden des Anstreichers, aber nur das Zweite drängt mich zum Schreibtisch. In me, there is a war between the enthusiasm I feel for the blossoming apple tree and the horror at the speeches of the painter, and that was Hitler. But it's only the second of these that forces me to my desk. The enthusiasm, this enthusiasm was one I too felt that forced me to my desk. And as I began writing, the catkins were lengthening on the hazel bush below my desk, the snowdrops daring to make an appearance, the genocidal news of war crimes and ethnic cleansing and of the deep suffering of my friends of 15 years was barely containable, and it compelled us to language, what was quite literally unspeakable. We would say, we have no words. We would say, we don't know what to say. We would say, unfathomable, insane. We call these cries. People call them many things when speaking to us of what they are to them. For some, they may be poems, for others, prayers or protest songs. We are also calling them cries from an abyss. A cry is raw. It escapes the body from the prior structures of thought and language. It has not yet been subject to the categories of genre or critique. It is the start of healing and the start of helping. So we offer these cries in their raw form, not greatly tidied up or overly edited, but sitting as a diary of the destruction of much we have loved, of the effort to find courage and faith, even cheerfulness on occasion. We are not seeking literary accolades. We are seeking to language, to cry with the pain of people of the land of Palestine, to refuse erasure, and to document our daily work of love. Khawla.
Thank you, Alison. Good evening, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us. This event is described as an evening of words, prayers, and silence. I would like to describe this evening as an evening of courage. There is a lot of courage in clicking on the link to join an event about Gaza. There's a lot of courage in deciding to join us as we look the world in the eye refusing to turn away, refusing to sleepwalk and pretend that nothing is happening in the world. So thank you so much for being with us today. I've never written poetry before the Gaza genocide. My first undergraduate degree is in English literature, but I moved on to English language education and applied linguistics for my master's and doctorate studies. And I built an academic career in the field of applied linguistics, not in the field of literary studies or poetry or creative writing. But I found myself writing poems every day. And I'm going to tell you the story of how that came about. How do I respond? How can I prepare a response? How can I sustain a response? How do I hold a response that is safe, that is possible, that is sayable? How do I present a response with the usual scholarly confidence that I'm trained to perform in as an academic? How do I respond when theories of language and social justice do not normally include Palestine and Palestinian lives? Because these topics, we are told, these topics we've been warned, are complicated, risky, and cannot be subjected to academic scholarship in my own discipline. My discipline, a discipline known as applied linguistics, which on paper is concerned with the mediation between theory and practice in relation to language use around us, a discipline with a particular focus on interrogating the use and abuse of language and symbolic violence in the world. Yet, once again, the except for Palestine prevails even in disciplines that have words and words analysis as their bread and butter. I recently said to applied linguistics colleagues, our discipline has lost its bread and butter because of Palestine. Those of you who know me personally or through my work as an academic know that I always speak about the power of language and the endless possibilities of education. I educate for hopeful futures. I educate as a practice of protest, of love, of hope. My scholarship is about language and education. Language and education. I've consistently written about the language of language, how it describes, how it changes, how it transforms. I have consistently talked about and taught about education as a site for struggle, education as a light that offers fairer futures, not only for ourselves, but also for children and young people, our children and young people. However, I had to sit with a letdown, which I had to endure from the silence of my academic field and the indifference from the education field. The silence and the indifference truly stunned me into silence in the first few months of this ongoing genocide in Gaza. Stunned by the endless stream of horrors, stunned by the loud silence of people around me, stunned by the surveillance and the quick collapse of systems, orders, values, and everything upon which civic life as we once knew it was built, stunned into silence that turned into fire in my bones, fire in my bones. How do I respond? How do I sustain a response? Palestinian thinker and writer Edward Said taught us that writing is the final resistance we have against the inhuman practices and injustices that disfigure human history. But how do I write when there are no words left? Michael Rosen talks about the impossibility of language in his 2023 book. He says, I sometimes think that saying something like this feels impossible doesn't help me. It keeps me stuck in the impossible. What if then I try to express the impossible thing using impossible language? Fire in the bones, stunned into silence, looking for a response. How do I respond? And then I saw a starlight for a few months. It was coming from the lonely poetic cries that I sat with every morning as I checked my social media to read the prayers from my dear sister Alison Phipps. I responded by praying silently with what I knew from the language of care, patience, humility, justice, supplication, and the language of humanity, morality, virtues, and ethics that I carried with me and learned and relearned from my own faith. My first response was a retelling of a phone conversation with my father, who's currently trying to stay alive along with the rest of my family in Gaza. My first response was a cry in the form of a poem telling the story of the call. It's called Not to Worry, from the 3rd of February, 2024. The cry goes, he asks me not to worry. Darling, he says, we will be fine. Our tent stood the test of rain. Our bread might last for another day. Our clothes are not that heavy, but fine. He asks me not to worry. Hey, he says, we still try to smile. We talked about your funny story. It still made us laugh. Our faces remember how to smile. He asks me not to worry. Listen, he says, we survived the night. The bombs were too close. We were ready to go. The bullets prepared us for a quick death, but here we are, talking to you again. Please don't worry, he says. The line starts to break. I could hear bombs. Dad, I said. And with this, we started to write daily poetic cries in response to one another, to events in Gaza, to observations from the world, to screams of wailing mothers, to the pain of children with amputated limbs, to the sadness in the eyes of fathers, and the disbelief in the eyes of grandparents who themselves have grown up in refugee camps, in tents, telling the tales of the Nakba of 1948. We write daily as workers with words who know that we have nothing but words, who know that our words cannot hold, but we have nothing else to hold us. On this, I wrote just last week about words, a poem called Tired Words. I hold my tired words daily. I tenderly listen to them as they cry with me. I'm no longer sure who's holding who. When they felt my loss for them as I dig, they had mercy on me. They splashed on the screen as I sat in stillness. With them I breathed, I wept and smiled. Oh, words, there is refuge in your flowing strings that hold my heart with verbs. That hold my heart with verbs. And here I'm returning to what I started with. Language and education, language and education. moving with the crumbs of words and using them to educate, to keep telling, to capacitate. Our language is simple. Often it entails words spoken in Arabic from Gaza, translated into English and presented as a form of stunned languaging that tells a story and leaves it open, waiting for a response. Many people read our poetic cries with their children. Others read them in protests, in fundraising events, in worship spaces, in Quaker meetings, and in classrooms. These words know no limits, no boundaries, no age restrictions. These words are educational. These words are light. These words are courage. These words are faith. These words are traveling words. And as Alison said, slowly and slowly, more people are reading, whispering and tearing. More people are following us, waiting for the next morning cry. More people are coming to grips with the reality of the madness that is Gaza. More people are coming to the reality that Gaza matters. Gaza matters. I don't say this because I am a Palestinian refugee who lived in Gaza for 14 years, nor do I say this because all my family are currently trapped in Gaza. No. Gaza matters because it experiences all the evil you could name in the world. Gaza matters because it experiences all the evil that you could never imagine in the world. Gaza is the web of all issues that you could name as part of the collective human struggle for justice. Gaza matters because it's the epicenter of occupation, colonialism, racism, capitalism, white supremacy, corruption, and Nitra politics. Without Gaza, our scholarship loses its value. Without Gaza, our education loses its meaning. Without Gaza, our values lose their mooring. Without Gaza, our world loses its order. Without Gaza, our words lose their holding. We all have a duty to respond to the madness that is Gaza. I've just told you the story of my response, just as Alison shared with you the story of her response. We offer you our words as a way. These words are indeed in your care now, and they need a shelter. Thank you.
And so it is, as we say in this season, that the Word was made flesh and dwelt among us. And so this is the enfleshed copy of Keep Telling of Gaza, which came together in 3 weeks. Khawla and I have also sent a manuscript to Wild Goose Publications, which will come out sometime next year. But the wonderful Anik Yarman, who is the publisher of She Press, based in Germany, who had gone through a severe silencing herself as an academic publisher in Germany, had been following our call and response, our response and our call for several months, and reached out to me and asked if we had any plans to publish and if we would consider speaking with her about this. We were deeply touched by her tenderness and her courage, her real visceral courage, and her commitment to try and find a way to bring these words to press, which she then did. I may never forgive my colleague Khawla for saying that we should get this out before Christmas, and what that led to as a 3-week editing marathon between us all. But here we have Keep Telling of Gaza, and Khawla's friend Imad Abu Sataya has generously gifted us this beautiful image on the front cover, this image of Gaza rising, which is just the most extraordinary, twisting, dynamic shape of a woman rising from the rubble, which was first produced, I think, at least 3 aggressions ago. I think 2014 was when he produced that piece of artwork, and it's sat above my desk ever since then. The book comes with a trigger warning that Anik insisted should be placed on the front page. The trigger warning is, of course, genocide. And the book is dedicated. It is for all Palestinian people, we keep telling. For the children of the world, our words and wounds are part of the fight for a fairer future. And it is dedicated to all who tell the truth. So we're going to just read backwards and forwards for a little while for you and share some of the words. These were edited together by Anik Yaman, and she really took a long time to carefully curate a collection that wasn't based on date order, even though they come with a date, each one themselves, but more where she was seeing resonances or themes or particular areas that she wanted to bring out and bring together. Who speaks for those without rights? Tell us. Who? 3rd of July. The wicked say, move. We will destroy your neighborhood. We will destroy your refugee camp. We will kill all your family. We will destroy your schools. We will destroy your universities. We will destroy your food. We will destroy the tents you now live in. We will have no mercy.
Safe zones from the 3rd of July. They declared some safe zones, dropping leaflets of death maps with colours and whips of lines. They declared some safe zones, adding numbers to squares with messages of death threats. Leave or else, they warn. Run or else, they threaten. Move or else, they abuse. Running to safe zones, running in safe zones, running from safe zones, running out of safe zones. They engineered the death zones, people trapped between the lines, and bombs dropping everywhere. On the 14th of July, the shipping. They resumed the shipping of bombs. Smaller ones, they say, not the big bombs. Drop multiple ones to get the heavy bombs. Bomb, bomb. They resumed the shipping of weapons, raining death using all advanced weapons, thinning a population with more weapons. Bomb, bomb. They resumed the shipping of death, their globally engineered death, truly globalizing, unlike any other death. Bomb, bomb. They resumed the shipping of horrors, bombing tents among endless horrors, a tiny strip of land, a tiny strip of land witnessing all horrors. Bomb, bomb.
28th of September. Give us more bombs, demand the wicked. Ship them now. Give us arms for free. We need to kill the children. We need to kill. We need to destroy the schools. We need to flatten the homes of the children. We are killing and 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 killing.
When I die, 3rd of October. When I die, reads a child's will. Don't cry. This saddens me. When I die, give my clothes away to those in need. When I die, send my accessories to those names. When I die, donate my allowance, split it fairly. When I die, look after my brother, says the latter under the rubble.
14th of September. Bless the children who want to play in the park like normal children. Bless the children who want to learn in school like normal children. Bless the children on pink roller skates. Comfort the fathers and mothers of the 16,500 children killed by the wicked.
Death blocks, 9th of August. They cut our bleeding land into blocks, added numbers to mark the blocks, splashed death between the blocks. They cut our bleeding land into blocks, dropped leaflets as they bombed the blocks, told the dying to leave the blocks. They cut our bleeding land into blocks, nowhere else to go to between the blocks. The whole map is covered in red blocks. They cut our bleeding land into blocks. Trees witnessing the erasure of blocks. Birds refusing to sing. Birds refusing to sing over their blocks.
21st of August. We will say we are going to cease fire. And when you start to hope that there might be an end to holding bodies and body parts in your arms, we will carry on as before, but force you to agree to our one condition, that you praise our forever war and call it peace, say the wicked.
The bucket, 10th of August. And on the screaming screen, there were more crying men, holding many pieces mixed with blood, with their eyes wide open, their faces covered in dust, digging more pieces, placing them in a bucket, in a bombed school full of human pieces, and the bucket is full. And the bucket is full, getting fuller. An old man shakes his head. To the bucket he points, the bleeding bucket, the once white bucket. And in disbelief he says, show the bucket to the world.
Second of September. We will not target military sites, say the wicked. We will kill thousands. and we will expel people, all the people. And when others follow rules of war and hit our military bases in revenge for our killing, we will unleash a hell on the world like you never saw.
A world without order. 1st of August. Unstoppable evil, flowing weapons, endless killing, a standing ovation. Another journalist killed, last seen above rubbles, buried without a head. Buried without a head, brain cells mixed with sand. Fellow journalists mourning, reporting in pain and tears. We won't stop, they say, we won't stop, they say, cracking voices in dismay. A population trapped, starved in a death camp, traumatized to death. There's nothing but grief.
14th of July. She is missing. He is missing. They are missing. They are all missing. They are trapped. Their bodies are unreachable under the rubble of home. We cannot oil their skin in a final touch of love, or dig their graves and gentle them with our tears. They are missing, 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 missing.
Rice bag, 18th of August. I saw a child's remains in a rice bag, shredded into nothing but 3 kilos, placed in a rice bag that remains half empty. I saw a child's remains in a rice bag. Oh, my little one, you were not buried whole. Oh, my little one, you were not buried whole. Remains, parts, pieces, just like my witnessing heart. I saw a child's remains in a rice bag. Oh, rice bag, what has become of us? Held by a father, digging humanity's grave.
3rd of October. In future, the wicked will wring their hands and blame their false friends who did not do as good friends do and stop their crazed wanton destruction, but did as dealers do, feeding their violent habit and profiteering.
Ethics of Love, 21st of July. Existing for one another, against their politics of hate, with their aesthetics of symbols. A watermelon, a kufiyah, a poster, a sticker, a kite, a flag, a pin. Building a movement of love, solidarity, and collective struggle, with eyes meeting, tearing, and comforting. In our thousands the chant goes, in our millions the crowd repeats, we are all Palestinians, the spirit echoes. Looking after one another, holding our otherness and togetherness, remaking life with ethics of love.
worry,
soft,
Boog, yumuşak,
zachtlich, slim,
akıllı,
smart,
kırılgan,
kugelig,
şeffaf,
fragile,
intelligent,
kuvrek, tender,
zerbrechlich,
morbido, cha-cha,
klug, elegant,
Zerbrechlich,
zart,
fragile,
ausgehoord,
tenero,
intelligent,
soft,
rashid,
latitare,
sobte,
smart,
tendre,
schlau,
smarte,
fragile,
zerbrechlich,
jonjak,
tender,
kan,
zart,
poederom,
klauwer,
smart,
rotheid,
fragile,
meer,
tender,
soft,
torere,
fragile, tender,
soft,
yumuşak,
soft,
intelligent,
slim, smart,
smart,
rashid,
elegant,
poederom,
fragile, tender, hard,
fragile, kuvrek, tender,
soft, smart, fragile, narin, akıllı, kırılgan, sevecen.
Thank you.
Khawla, Alison, you leave us fragile with your words. Thank you so much. I see that very few people have put anything into the chat to ask you because you have left us unable to respond. It's been so moving. So thank you. And I would thank Hayab for putting the link to your book into the chat. I've already clicked on that and I will be buying that as soon as we finish tonight. I would like to start things going before people put their own questions and comments into the chat. I'd like to start by asking you if that relief that you spoke about, Alison, for people being able to share this, what you called languaging of the genocide. I think that after you've both finished this, we understand what you mean by that, but could you expand on that, both of you? Has there been a relief that has allowed people to speak out?
Khawla, do you want to go first?
I could go first, Alison. Thank you so much. That's a great question. There is a lot of hesitation to talk about Palestine. What we have done with this book and our daily poetic cries on our different social media feeds is to keep the flow, to ensure that there is always a response. I think we're trying to carve a really difficult path. We're trying to say to people, we can witness in different things and in different ways. We are in a stage where I feel we're just educating, raising awareness, capacitating. The silence is still there, the worry is still there, the fear of repercussions is still there, and it might never go away. They want to strangle us so words could stop coming. And it's been really difficult to keep the flow of our responses because it does feel like we are digging for words. As we say in the introduction for this anthology, we say our words are tired and exhausted and repeated. There's something particularly horrifying about the repetition of the genocide. Khaled Abdullah, an Egyptian actor and activist, was talking about this actually in one of his speeches in a national protest in London. He did say, because the genocide has been ongoing for a very long time, we got used to the different genres and classifications that we see scenes and we can categorize them. And this only happens because these scenes have been repeated and repeated and repeated. So to answer your questions, I think what we're trying to do here is to say there is a way, and we want these words to travel. We want these words to take a life of their own. And we want these words to show that we're responding. We're not tired. We will not look away. And we're hoping that people will develop more courage to take them and spread them. Things are happening, but they're happening very slowly, very slowly. And we know that any change is painful and it's going to be very slow, because those in power are fighting to keep the status quo. They're fighting to stay in power. We live in times of monsters, and monsters will not give up on their monstrous acts. And we're trying to respond to monsters with words of love and witnessing and solidarity. And as we're doing that, we're showing our humanity in the face of their inhumanity. I think that's the path that we have carved together. I don't know, Alison, if you have anything that you would like to say in response.
Yeah, I think it's helped in two ways for me, Marianne. One of them is just that intense feeling of helplessness when colleagues I've worked with for 15 years, friends I've had for 15 years, are experiencing the worst things that human beings can do to one another. And the feeling, we went through a phase, I think, many of us in the autumn last year where, 19 are dead today, 12 are dead tomorrow, 13 are dead the next day. Every single day, a repeating of the horror and losing colleagues one after the other, where there was no space to grieve and nobody knew what to say to us. And some of that was out of fear and some of that was out of embarrassment, that quintessential British feeling. And some of that was out of the paralysis of the horror. And I realized that there were many different forms of silence that were visiting people. And some of it was just out of a sense of wanting an easy life or thinking it had nothing to do with them. And so there were all kinds of responses in me to those different forms of silence. Some where I felt compassionate, some where I felt I needed to educate, some where I felt intense anger and disappointment. And where I discovered myself counting and judging colleagues who had come alongside and colleagues who'd walked past me in the corridor and not been able to meet my eye. And I realized that for me, to not become embittered, to not become what I hate, to not just dissolve into anger that is part of what can become a genocidal mindset, I would need to do some very serious work with my maker. And that meant prayer. And, I don't say it lightly when I say we are not easily reduced to prayer, because I believe it's true. I mean, this kind of prayer is a prayer that I have rarely felt myself reduced to. And where I turn to the law and the prophets and the words of Isaiah and the words of Jeremiah, and you can hear it, those of you of the Christian tradition, when I say the wicked, you hear the Psalms, you hear those words of David, you hear those words of the prophet, you hear the words of Ezekiel. You know you're in a tradition that has long been held. And what has been remarkable for me, I think, is that in turning to prayer, I have found my professional work enabled and re-embodied after its destitution by the genocide. And I have then found myself able to destitute the violence by just describing in those simple words what I am seeing every day and what I am hearing. So that work of witnessing, of testimony, of entering into the dispute with my maker to say, why, oh my God, why must this happen to my people? And to join that into the grace of the traditions of Islam and the deeply held and common prophetic language that we share with our Jewish brothers and sisters, and to say this has to have meaning and I must breathe that meaning onto those bones. So can these bones live was something in my head a lot of the time when I was writing. Out of the rubble, can these bones live? And I think what I have experienced, and I say this with really nothing but surprise. And certainly in the last few days, but I think what this practice, this discipline has enabled is a sense of resurrection, in the real sense that the grave does not hold the body. The bones live, the words live on beyond. And I see this in my colleagues in Gaza, and where I am now, after 11 months, we've restarted the education programs. Today, I was involved in a conference with those colleagues. Yesterday, I supervised my master's student in the Gaza Strip for the first time. We had a conversation no supervisor should ever have with a student, which was the conversation where she said to me, if I should die, what will become of the data? What will become of the work that I do? How do we store this? How can we safeguard the words beyond the grave? And the realization that whilst I am palliating the conditions of my friends and colleagues, and whilst Khawla is palliating the condition of her family in a context where all know they are condemned to death, all know they are walking our Via Dolorosa, all know that they are experiencing a form of crucifixion. Yet my colleagues come online and they listen and they say to us, we are alive and we are teaching our students and they are learning again about how to teach language. And we are filling in forms and we are doing ethical approvals with the Islamic University of Gaza and Al-Aqsa University and with the consortium of the universities. And I am here to tell you that this is life, and it is wonderful to be able to fill out those forms and have Zoom meetings and to think about how we do peer research and collaboration. And suddenly all the language, which for me, and I know for you, Rosa and Khawla, is often quite a deathly practice in higher education, I see rising from the dead. And I see it as the way in which Palestine teaches life again and again and again and again, and why this practice is really about a daily practice of witnessing to the universal Christ, to the risen Christ, to the prophet in Islam, to the Savior to come in Judaism, and to the Savior who is Christ for our own tradition. And for me, that is the most remarkable and beautiful experience of faith that I have ever experienced, because I never really thought that I would live to see the risen Christ in such a powerful and palpable, and I have to say, humorous way. And when Mary says in the Garden of Gethsemane, you are my Lord, and he says, don't hold on to me. I kind of feel I'm in a Zoom call because I know I can't hold on to my colleagues in Gaza, but I want to, and that I understand the scripture coming alive again in new ways. So for me, this discipline in applied linguistics and language education, this discipline of a poet, has also been, I think, in a really profound way for Khawla and I, the most remarkable experience of interfaith prayer, and of connection that takes us and transcends all of the petty arguments of the 70s and 80s around interfaith discussions, and has just brought us into a new place where we are not bound by death, but we are indeed a risen people, a people of life.
Thank you. And to a certain extent, you've answered, you've responded in a way to Hayab's question, which is quite profound. He says that you've both reminded us that the act of questioning sustains the vital practice of keeping telling. And his question is, how do we move from the cry, the lamentation or mourning of what is lost, to the scream, the disruptive protest that shatters the normalization of genocide? How do we transform the wail of despair into a defiant roar that demands accountable listening? Now, I think the two of you have made that transformation. How do the rest of us do that? That we need that address from you that will help us to make those demands accountable listening. Alison, which one's going first?
I could go first. Thank you, Marianne. Hayab, that's an amazing question. We do say in the book, go easy on yourself. That's probably the first thing that we all need to say. We all cope in different ways and do things in different ways. For me, I don't think I moved in between from a cry to a scream. One of the challenges of witnessing a live stream genocide is the horrors are ongoing, and every time you think it can't get any worse, the wicked surprise us that there are other levels of evil that normal people like us could never imagine, and it keeps on getting worse. When you think you're done with a cry and you could scream, you wake up to news that knock you back to the cry. And sometimes you hold your pieces and you feel, I am ready to scream and cry again and scream. I think it's normal for people to feel that in a minute they are crying and lamenting and mourning. And that normally happens when you're watching a video and bearing witness, or you're watching the news and you're responding with a cry. The minute after that, you feel you're full of righteous anger and you want to speak up and you want to protest and you want to march. Then more horrors happen and you go back to square number one and you cry as if you've never cried. That's why we need to go easy on ourselves. The wicked are relying on us to get tired and get fed up. They're relying on us to say there are no more words left. We've said everything and that's it. They want us to shut up, go away and die. And to answer the last part of your question of how do we transform the wail of despair into a defiant roar, I think despair is our worst enemy. If we think the wicked is our enemy, despair is worse than the wicked. Despair is their ultimate goal. They want us to all say this is way beyond us. This is unstoppable. We can't do anything. It is unspeakable. The organizations around us are telling us it is unspeakable. Educational institutions are telling us this is unspeakable. Universities are reminding us of impartiality and neutrality, which is all euphemism for inhumanity. We need to make sure that we do not despair. And this is the hardest thing. I want to follow up on what Alison said when she said the challenge is to stay soft important not to give up to anger and a genocidal mind. It's important that as we cry and scream and we refuse the silence and the erasure, it's important to hold on to our humanity. The words that we're sharing with you are words to remind ourselves and remind everybody that this is not normal. The normal is our humanity, our values and ethics. All the buzzwords that we used to believe in before the genocide, we need to bring those words and mean them this time. And that's what Alison said when she said, we feel that we are being resurrected. Somehow our world is being resurrected and our words are coming back to us with new meanings. How can you say the word international law without laughing these days? How can you? But we need to bring these words back into our public sphere and political sphere and educational sphere, and we need to mean them and do something different with them. And this is hard work, and we can't do it alone, and we're relying on all of us to connect with our humanity, go easy on ourselves, and bear witness. This book, and there'll be other books coming out, all of these books are the result of bearing witness every single day. And I think all of us need to bear witness, and this is the hard work. The hard work is not to say I am busy with my work and family and kids. All of these are important, but there are also bigger questions in the world. Again, going back to Alison's point, I feel that because we're sitting at this life-death continuum, we're seeing people dying every day, we're checking on people, we're checking on death or life and death and death and life. I think our way of living has continuously changed. We feel that to live means something else, and to stay alive means something else. It will take us years to make sense of the nonsense that we're living today. And there is no easy way of moving in between stages or saying we can move from this stage into another stage. It's fine that we can go through all of these stages in the same minute, because what we are witnessing is not normal. There is no roadmap for navigating the genocide.
I think that Helen says what we're all feeling. She says, I will not give up. She says, I'm a nobody. I'm sure she's not. But she says, I will not give in to hatred. So she is inspired by what you've said. I think we all are. I have an eye on the time. And could I ask Alison, just very quickly, Rosa has said, what is happening that might give the people of Gaza hope for a just peace? Is there, in a couple of minutes, anything that you can say to that, Alison?
I'm going to quote my dear friend Kathy Galloway, who many of you will know, who was speaking at an event in Solas in the summer, and she said, I'm not that interested in hope. I'm interested in courage, in faith, and in cheerfulness. And I think I've really stayed with those words because they've really summed up for me to how I have been feeling. I have no hope for Gaza. I have no hope. My hope was the International Court of Justice, and I had very little hope in it. My hope was the International Criminal Court issuing arrest warrants. I am glad that they have done that, but I have no hope in the countries to enact those and to support those organizations which they themselves built to actually hold people to justice. I have no hope for that, but I will not abandon international law or the language of international law or the language of humanitarianism, which is the words of the people, and I will not abandon the words of faith and the liturgies that might bring us to a place of transformation. Walter Brueggemann says, change only comes after you have had the public expression of pain. And that is very much what Khawla and I are doing every day. We know that we have committed ourselves and are accountable to one another now, in a in a enchaining of one another to each other to say we will do this, we can do this, and we will do this. That we will publicly express the pain. But we will also ridicule established power, and we do that in our poetry. There is a mocking there. There is a sarcasm that we use. There is an important tone of satire that is familiar to all oppressed peoples. Satire is a way that we can puncture some of this and turn those words back to people and use it in the traditions that have gone before us. So I take strength and solace from the traditions and the ancestors who have gone before us all the way down the law and the prophets. They have given us words which are strong enough to hold us and are holding us as we bear witness. And finally, Walter Brueggemann says the third element in transformation is the song and dance of women. And in finding women, in finding my sister Khawla in this way, but also many others, I have been really strengthened. I know Moira is probably on the call, and many others who we have given one another a great deal of strength. And I say the song of dance of women in the tradition that Brueggemann gives it, because it is from women that life is born. And that is a powerful and profound biblical statement, and it may be peculiar, and it may come in ways that are difficult, but in a time and an age of monsters where we are seeing the radical prevention of Palestinian birth, then the song and dance of women has its own deeply erotic and therefore life-giving potential. And that, of course, is what we celebrate at Christmas in the birth of the Christ child, the child given to all of us, the life in a bundle of cloth, Christ in the rubble, but still Christ to us. And so that's what I hold to. And I think that also is an answer to Hiab's question about accountability and where we can destitute despair. Despair is a luxury we cannot afford. Our colleagues in Gaza are refusing to despair. So it is our job to hold out a hand of prayer and love and commitment, but also of normality. Because what our colleagues in Gaza want to do, who are academics, is academic work. So we do academic work. We are now sending each other very boring emails about filling in the form and uploading things to the platform. We're doing it with a humor and a gentleness, but these are the things that say, you may have reduced us to nothing, and yet still we rise and we work and we commit to doing the work of justice and peace. And I think in that, it's really echoing those words of our mutual prophets who say, the Lord says, what is it that I require of you? It is to act justly, it is to love mercy, and it is to walk humbly. And that is to be soft, smart, fragile, tender. Soft, smart, fragile, tender, in that more modern parlance.
Well, you may have said that you have no hope, but Joe says Alison and Khawla have given us a new vocabulary and renewed hope and not despair. And I think that that's probably what we're all going to take away from this evening. But I'm going to say thank you to you, but I'm going to hand over to Anne-Marie Clements, who will have more to say, I'm sure. But thank you so much.
Hi everyone. Thank you, Marion. Like many people in the chat, I too am I'm lost for words, and for people who know me who are in this Zoom call, they'll be flabbergasted to hear me say that. Just to very briefly introduce myself, maybe to both of you, and to anyone on the call who doesn't know, or who I don't know, I should say, sorry. My name is Anne-Marie Clements and I work for Justice and Peace Scotland. It's been an honour for us to co-badge and host this event tonight. It really, really has. Again, I know many of you are familiar, but just for anyone who's not, Justice and Peace Scotland is a Catholic agency of the Bishops' Conference of Scotland, and we have a remit to educate, advocate, and campaign on issues relating to international peace and non-violence, human rights, social justice, and care for creation. So a big remit with a lot of things in it. One of our main areas of concern is, and always has been for a long time, I should say, is peace and justice for all in the Holy Land, everyone who calls Palestine and Israel home. And I think many of us here today, or all of us here today, probably are in agreement that peace and justice is not there for all right now. And we hope, and we continue to campaign and educate and advocate that will happen. So yeah, my role tonight was to thank both of you, and I really don't know how to do it. I found it quite emotional. I feel like I'm going to get emotional speaking just now, which is embarrassing because it's been recorded. I really don't know how to thank both of you. I think maybe just in saying that, I found it extremely emotional, extremely moving, and a really, really nice, different perspective and lens to have on Gaza compared to all the various political rhetoric and so-called debates and opinions and all these things that we see so often online. If I'm allowed to say this, I actually found this to be a calming and peaceful approach to looking at the conflict, which might sound like a bit of a contradiction. So I thank you both very, very much on behalf of Justice and Peace Scotland and colleagues at all other organisations that have co-badged tonight's event. And I can hand over now to Alison. I believe you're going to end with a prayer for us, is that right?
Just before that, Anne-Marie, can I just add a very final word, very short, of thanks from us as well before we hand over to Alison. When I was listening to you, I was remembering the words of Lindsay Hilsum, the veteran war reporter that we see in our screens, who travels all over the world in war-torn countries and has done for many, many years. She talks in her book about carrying books of poetry with her. And she particularly likes to read the poetry from people who live in the place that she's in. She does this because she talks about running out of words of her own to convey what she witnesses and to be able to deal with what she has witnessed. She talks about poetry and words as her vaccination against despair. And I think we would all agree tonight, Alison, Khawla, that you are doing exactly that, vaccinating us and all of those who read your words to fight and to resist what the wicked do want. And they want us to despair and believe there is nothing can be done. So thank you for your courage and for your faith. And I'm going to hand back over to you now, Alison, with your prayer that you have. Thank you.
Thank you. So this is a blessing that I wrote on the 7th of October 2024, a year on and 76 years later. Bless those who know it didn't begin a year ago. Bless those who mark the many massacres. Bless those who mourn. Bless the families of the unheard under the rubble. Bless every captive not released, and each one released. Bless those who struggle against despair. Bless those who struggle for justice. Peace will be theirs. Amen.
Amen.